Hello, everybody. This is James. Welcome to Restoring Heroes. I'm here with you with Pastor Eli Williams.
Well, hello, everybody. Yes, he said my name, so I don't need to say that again. Uh, Excited to be here with you, James. And I never tire of talking about fatherhood and the fatherlessness crisis that we face in our communities because, first of all, people need to be aware. And then after have been made aware, people need to know what it is that they can do. And there is something that everyone can do. So
You said something there that stood out to me. What is the crisis? What is the fatherless pandemic? What is going on in our country?
well, first of all, it is a global crisis. Fatherlessness is plaguing all kinds of cultures and countries around the world. It is a symptom of rebellion against God's order, basically. In the U.S., in 2022, for example, 18.3 million children lived in a home in which their biological father did not live.
Hmm.
That is 1 in 4 children growing up with their biological father not present in their home. Now, that does not mean that they do not have some father figure, and it doesn't mean that the 75% are good fathers,
Hmm.
meaning, nurturing and safe and emotionally available for their children. So any way you slice it, it's a problem. If we were to talk about 18 plus million children having cancer, it would raise alarm bells everywhere. And it would be
Right.
like, this is problem number one. Let's put all of our resources behind solving this problem because that's too many kids to be sick.
You're right.
Well,
Right.
fatherlessness creates all kinds of problems, challenges for children, for families, for communities, for an entire nation. So it's a crisis and it needs to be dealt with as such.
Now, do you feel that you brought something up? If it was cancer, there will be alarm bells ringing off. There will be funding going towards it. There will be. Do you feel that the world is not addressing? Why do you feel the world is not addressing? That's a better question. Why do you feel that the world at large and is not addressing the elephant in the room, which is the the plight of fatherlessness, the effects of people not of men not taking care of their responsibilities, men not being in a home, and it's so the effects are so blatant, they're so in your face, they're so you can see it in our communities, you can see it on
It's
the young
obvious.
man's face. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
Why isn't there alarm bells going off? Why do you think that is?
Well, there's probably multiple reasons, but the first one that comes to mind is that there's not the political will.
Okay.
There is not the motivation, the drive on on either side of the aisle to get serious about dealing with it.
Okay.
It seemed some years ago, and this is not to get political at all, but it's to try to answer the question the best way I know it. Just to give an example, um, we had a candidate for president not too long ago by the name of Barack Obama, who really did sound as though this was going to be a major initiative of his presidency.
Yeah, I remember that speech. Yeah.
Yes, and he had all kind of resources behind the research and planning and that kind of thing. And then after he won the election, it seems that it all just went away.
Yeah.
So that was very, very disappointing. But you could look at Republicans also and see that there is a lack of will to actually deal with this. I think some of it has to do with the fact that there and I don't want to get into any kind of bashing of anyone. I'm just trying to answer the question as best I can.
Yeah, yeah. You can
There,
speak freely here. It's no big deal.
well,
We
I
got thick
yes,
skin.
thank you. I intend to speak freely, but I also want to be as accurate as I can be,
It makes sense.
and you can do that without calling names and that sort of thing. So I'll put it this way: there is a political correctness run amok, where it's almost as though if you focus on the problems we have in our community that are male centered,
Mm.
you give too much attention to what's going on with men, then there's opposition that raises up from those who want all the attention on women. So
Or men pretending to be women. You forgot
yeah,
about those guys too.
so that's all I meant. It's just the state of our world as it is. I think that goes into it. And then there are others who are, despite all of the research, despite all the evidence, refuse to believe that it is fatherlessness that's driving so many of our social problems in the world today.
Mm.
So there's that. It's kind of I don't know if you would call it a willful ignorance. Maybe perhaps that's what it is. But there's no way of getting around it if you read the research. It's easy to see that many of the uh, issues from crime to gangs to school shootings to school failure, to mental health issues. So many of these things that are too prevalent today are driven by the fact that children are growing up without the kind of support they need. That being the need for two responsible, mature adults, male and female,
Come on now.
committed to each other to raise their children in a nurturing and safe um, environment, spiritual environment, so that they can be the best human beings they can be.
Yes, sir.
That's what it comes down to for me. And now, if I can talk spirit a little bit more spiritual about it,
Yeah, definitely.
um, I believe that it's a trick of the enemy. Our arch enemy, God's arch enemy, Satan, who wants the human race totally in disarray. He wants all this chaos. And he knows that the best way to do that, as any military person will tell you, is to cut off the head.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he
Yes.
knows if he can cut off the head, then the body will die.
Hmm.
And so if he can separate the man, the father, from his God-given role as the head of his home, then the family will disintegrate. And we see that happening. And it has been happening for generation after generation after generation, and it keeps getting worse. So I know that's a long answer, and there are probably other factors at play as well, but all of that leads to I think the answer to your question as to why is not much being done about this issue.
Now, do you feel, because I've been researching and looking at documentaries, things like that. There were the enemy has a two-pronged attack. And Christianity used to have, the church used to have a defense for that. So we used to have in our communities, there were strong churches and strong church communities. So we were able to teach the men how to be a father through those avenues. So you will learn how to be a responsible, godly man through church. And then you'll take that into work. And because you are a Christian, because you thrive in the Lord, your work will give God glory. So you'll work like you're glorifying God. You'll work hard, which again makes you a provider for your family and things like that. Do you think that the world has done a good job of disconnecting men from the source of what fatherhood is and what masculinity is? So if you disconnect men from the source of God and where that actually comes from and the mandate that we actually have, and you give it to, and there's nothing wrong with these movies per se, but you give it to a John Wayne or a Clint Eastwood or the what's the Equalizer and John Wick and all. Masculinity has lost its grounding. And do you feel, just because, do you feel the church has nowadays is doing a good job of getting men back into that grounding of what it means to be a father, a godly father. If I said it correctly.
No, is the simple answer. If I can share a little bit about my upbringing, I come from a Christian family, but the reason we are a Christian family is because of some choices that my parents made.
Mm,
Both my parents, both my mother and my father, came from homes that had been abandoned by their fathers, right? So my father's father walked away, leaving his wife and children. My mother's father had walked away, leaving his wife and children. They came together, and when they decided to get married, both being Christians, they made the choice that they are going to do the right thing, and they're going to raise their children together. They're going to stay together and raise their children together.
hmm hmm
That choice that they made changed the trajectory of my family. In other words, we would have followed in that same curse of fatherlessness had it
Yeah.
not been for the decisions that my mother and my father made, right? My
Yeah.
father decided when he was young that he was not going to be the kind of man that would walk out on his family and abandon his children, right?
Mm,
So he made that choice. And what helped him make that choice and to keep that promise is that he was a part of a church. He, even from a young age, was spiritually mature enough to become a junior deacon. So he was surrounded by and involved in a part of a spiritual community where there were men, grown men, deacons
yeah.
and
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
responsible men who could provide role modeling for him. So he had, the pastor and the other men of the church to look up to and to learn from, to learn how to be a man. So they had 9 boys and 4 girls, and none of us went to prison.
hmm
Not none of us were perfect either. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
but
I get that.
none of us joined gangs and that kind of thing. We were raised up to honor God. Uh, Not all of us did it perfectly, and I haven't done it perfectly all of my life. But we had the role model. The pattern was set by our Father, who worked to provide for us. He was there for us on a high school education. He was able to take care of all of our needs with the help of the Lord, I'm sure. He provided a home for us. We never lived in a rented house. Think about that. Never lived in a rented house. We
Mm,
didn't wear raggedy clothes. You didn't always have the best of everything, but as children, you don't care. I
right.
mean, you're too young to even think about that kind of stuff. Just having clothes to wear was enough. They were clean, always clean.
Yes.
So we had all of our needs met, never on welfare, not once. 13 children. Think about that. On a high school education. Both my parents had high school educations. They weren't college, graduates with high powered jobs. My mom was a stay at home mom all that time we were growing up. My father he worked like the proverbial dog. When he moved us to Ohio from Alabama, I was 3 years old, and he worked for the city of Dayton, and he took on other work, part-time jobs, as many as he could handle, and still take care of his fatherly duties and his church duties. And he took care of us. So I
Mm,
just say all that to say, for me, there is the answer. We need men to make the decision, to make the choice that I'm going to do this thing the right way. I'm not going
yeah.
to
Yes.
blame the mistakes my father made. I'm not going to blame the system. Not going to blame the white man. I'm not going to blame, you know, women. I'm not going to blame anybody. I'm going to be a man, and I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to raise my children. and I'm going to
Amen.
love my wife, and I'm going to be there for her and for them, and that's where it starts.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I love the fact that you said that because I believe that the real masculinity starts with the joyous taking of responsibility. So we take responsibility. No, it's not anybody's fault that these things happen, but like your father, you decided, he decided, and you decided, and hopefully your son and your daughter afterwards decided that, look, we're going to make better decisions than our forefathers. We're going to make better decisions. We're going to learn more. We're going to apply more. We're going to dive more into the scriptures and see what God says. I think being a cycle breaker is a way, because it starts with your mindset about what you're going to do with the cards that are dealt to you. And you can decide to make horrible decisions, or you can decide to make good decisions, but it's still, you have to take responsibilities for those decisions.
Yeah, and James, I've got to tell you, in all my years of working with fathers, and it's been a lot of years now where we have specialized in working with men and with dads.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best fathers I've ever known and worked with were raised in a fatherless home, or their father was an alcoholic, or he was a criminal in and out of prison, or he was some other bad example of what a father is. And those men, each and every one of them, said, I'm not going to be like that guy.
Right.
I know how not to be. So I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to do the right thing. That's what gives me so much hope. That's
Hmm.
what sustained me in this work, because I I I see what happens when it comes to, as you said, being a cycle breaker or destroying a curse. It comes down to, every man making the choice. I'm going to do this the right way. And God be my help. I'm going to be the kind of father that I wish
Amen.
I had had.
Yes. 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 Perfect. Perfect. So you started Urban Light Ministries in Springfield, Ohio. How many years ago?
It actually started out as just, me and my wife and my son doing outreach. That was in the mid to late 80s. And then we formally became an organization, a 501(c)(3), in 1995. 1995.
Wow. Wow.
And
So
our work didn't start out with fathers.
okay.
Our work started out doing children's work. We had a children's ministry that many locals know as the Sunshine Clubs, and an after school Christian outreach ministry that we did for 25 years, reaching and sharing the gospel with literally tens of thousands of kids over those years. And then my wife headed up um, other types of outreach ministries that centered around medical needs, because she was a nurse, and nutritional needs, because that was her passion. So we
Hmm.
had a food
Hmm.
pantry, and we had free meals and all kinds of things that were designed to meet the immediate felt needs, critical needs of people in the city, and especially around the neighborhood where our center was located. So that was her main thing. Mine was the children's work, and it was very, God used it. It was very, very fruitful as a ministry. And then it was about 10 years, 10 to 12 years after we'd been doing the Sunshine Club children's ministry that, you just start to take stock. You begin to evaluate and do some introspection. Are we making a difference?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Is what we are doing actually having the impact that we want to have? And so when we started that process, it became clear to me that something was missing, that not enough was being done, not by us and not by churches and not by all the organizations who are charitable and who are, government entities and all that, who are trying to help children have better outcomes. We're failing. I mean, all of us together, because the crime rate was not getting better. Kids were still, you know, having problems, failing in school,
Yep. Yep.
committing crimes, getting pregnant prematurely. Just there wasn't much improvement going on in terms of the good outcomes that you hope you have from the work that you're doing. So I started, wondering and looking into, well, what's missing? What is not happening here in our community?
Hmm.
And that's when a friend of mine, who happens to also be a pastor, but he was a career social worker, and at that point had retired, or was about to retire, and was doing some independent work. And he had done some study on fatherlessness, and he brought it to me. He asked to see me. We sat down and we talked, and he started showing me these statistics and
Hmm.
talking about the impact of fatherlessness. Um, and it was a revelation to me. I had an epiphany. It was like, this is what's missing.
Yes, sir.
It's the fathers. These kids are, even if, when we lead them to the Lord, they're going home to a place that's not going to nurture them spiritually, because the father either is not there, or he's not, being a model father in
Right.
terms of
Right.
being the leader of his home and the priest of his home and all that. So these kids are not going to, most of them, I shouldn't say all of them, because there's some who are resilient enough that even, not having saved parents will still hold so tightly to their salvation that they make it. But so many of them have just too much going against them, not
Yeah.
having a father who is their spiritual mentor, their model of what a mature, responsible, nurturing Christian man ought to be. So we started doing our fatherhood work after that. So it's been now, I lose track of how many years, but since, I believe, probably 2006.
Mm.
I think that sounds about right. 2006, when we started our fatherhood work.
Okay. Okay. Now, with the fatherhood work, what changes have you seen? Um, or let me say, what difficulties have you ran into with trying to establish the importance of men being in the home? Have you ran into any roadblocks or difficulties trying to explain to the city how important men are, even though they see? Remember, we talk about it, it's so obvious, but even though they see it, is it hard to put the glasses on them to help them see 2020 about fatherhood?
Well, here's what we did. I believe the Lord led us to begin to mobilize the leadership in the community. I had gotten to know some folks in other communities who were doing this work, and such as the Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families, and the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. And I learned about an organization over in Muskingum County called uh, Forever Dads. And I came to understand from my reading and research that it was important to mobilize the community.
Mm,
So we became a part of a project of Ohio Commission on Fatherhood that they called Community Mobilization for Responsible Fatherhood. When we found out about this small grant and the technical assistance that was available, we applied for it. We were the last county out of 10 to apply, and we were granted uh, $10,000. Like I say, it was small. It wasn't much. It
yeah.
wasn't much, but the other resources that were provided were very, very helpful, and probably more important than the money, because we received training on how to mobilize a community around fatherhood. And essentially, it was uh, my job to go out and recruit leadership in the community,
Mm,
representatives of as many sectors as possible. For instance, in law enforcement, I recruited the sheriff onto the table. Uh, and the Department of Job and Family Services executive director. That's the big social services agency that's government funded,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so he came to the table. The Children and Family First Council director came to the table. We had someone representing city government, county government, business, banking, and I forget all the other sectors. Oh, faith, of course. There was me. I was representing the faith community, but we had others also in the faith community. I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, we had 11 sectors represented at our table as we began to plan mobilizing our community around um, responsible fatherhood in light of what the statistics said at the time about the state of fatherlessness in Clark County.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So we put on some training. We had some workshops. We did a fatherhood summit in which we, brought people together for a day long, um, for some day long sessions on fatherhood and fatherlessness and things that we could do as a community to begin to address the father absence in our county, and particularly in the city where the census data show that there are certain zip codes in our community where fatherlessness was 50 to 70%.
Wow.
And the school, I didn't mention the schools. We had representatives from the school district, and they had statistics that showed not necessarily how many how many kids were fatherless, but the crime, not crime, but the poverty rate of the children in the schools. How many,
Right. Right.
qualified for free lunch and that kind of thing. So we had the data, and we had assistance from the National Fatherhood Initiative that was paid for by the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. So they sent in a representative to do a workshop. So we had the training on mobilization, and we were really off to a great start.
Okay. Okay.
And James, of those 10, I think it was 10 counties who had that grant, of those 10, we came out as one of the very best mobilized counties around fatherhood. And it was because we had the right people at the table, and we had started to do some things to deal with the father absence crisis in our county. But it wasn't all done exactly perfectly. And
Okay.
here's why. In order for a movement like that to be sustained, you need to have leadership that remains at the table, and you
Mhm.
need to have funding for for staff for it to keep it going. I mean, we
Okay.
were able to get some grants to do fatherhood classes, and we were doing them, in the jail. We were doing them wherever we could, put a class together. We were going into some social service agencies to do classes. Um, we had grown and actually become regional, and we were doing fatherhood work all over the Miami Valley and even in Madison County, which is outside the Miami Valley, because we were the only entity in all of Miami Valley that was doing that kind of work.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
we were, we had success with that, but the local Clark County mobilization effort began to falter. And here's what happened. Those folks who came to the table, and we formed this local Clark County fatherhood um, initiative, they began to retire. They got
Mm.
transferred. They got, different jobs in other places, and they left. And little by little, as these leaders who were at the table left the community, the ones coming in did not have the same enthusiasm, didn't have the same commitment, and so the movement faltered because of that, and because there was no one who was actually on the, doing the work as a leader, who was paid to
Uh-huh.
keep,
Uh-huh.
to keep that engine running. It finally eventually fell apart when we got a new job and family services director who just had priorities which didn't include fatherhood.
Which is strange because most of the things that happen in job and family services, which it makes me think of, I don't want to put my tinfoil hat on, but it makes me think that the government doesn't want the household to be together because that leaves them without, that people won't need them for stuff anymore, because most of the stuff that's happening in job and family services is, kids without the kids getting abused without fathers, the food stamps and all these other things. But if you have a father in the home, the likelihood of you needing those things will go away, and the likelihood of us needing the government, take my 10 4 hat off, but need the government for those things will go away too. But one of my questions was, and once you were talking about all this, I never heard you mention, besides one pastor that you had, why isn't the city pastors? Because there's, if my last calculations, um, it's like 100 and so churches in Springfield alone, and more, probably more than that. But it was like almost 200 churches in Springfield. Why aren't they coming? These men coming together and trying to, because it's like, again, it's an obvious problem. It's obvious what's going on. Why do you feel that? Why do you think these pastors are coming to you and trying to do something in their churches? There should be an explosion of men getting trained in each church. That's just how I think about it. You know what I mean? But I'll leave it up to you. Why do you think?
Well, first of all, yes, we have had fathers who were fully on board, some more than others, and some not at all involved. Um, uh, I'll go with the positive first. I had one pastor who we still have a good relationship today. He was on this like 100%. He arranged for me to come and do a father's class for an entire quarter, 13 weeks, 13 Sunday mornings. I came and for 1 hour, I taught our father love class to all the men. Well, at least most of the men, all the men that signed up. It was a packed, I mean, every time it was packed with men of all ages, including their college students, who were members of that church, and some of the younger fathers who had, you know, uh, teenage children and,
Mm-hmm.
and tweens, brought them. So we had a full house of from grandfathers to teenagers for this 13 weeks. It was just excellent. If I could have duplicated that and got other churches to do it, it would have been wonderful. But alas, the the enthusiasm just wasn't that
Wangs.
high. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a part of it is, and this is in fairness to pastors, they don't operate in a vacuum. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
pastors have they have a church to attend to, and there are deacons and other leaders in the church, and their visions, their passions come to play. It come into play if the church does not have something as a key part of their vision,
Right.
a key mission, then it's hard for the pastor to go against that, to try to put initiatives in place that the church doesn't support. I think that's a part of it, that there really needs to be buy-in by all of the church leadership, at least a majority of the church leadership, and
Mm-hmm.
they need to agree on, okay, this is what we're going to do this year. These are our priorities. Unfortunately, James, fatherhood doesn't rise, you know, to the top. And yeah, as a consequence, they're doing other things. And these churches are busy, most of them. They got all kinds of things going on. And unfortunately, fatherhood specifically is not one of them.
but the
As far as I
statistics,
believe, and probably as far as you believe, it ought to be in their mission, and it ought to be at the top because that's what's driving so many other of the other problems.
and the statistics show that even when you just talk about evangelism, if you get the kid, well, it's a 15% chance you'll get the parent. You know what I mean? Maybe if you get the woman or the mom, it's a 20, so it goes up a little bit that you'll get the rest of the children and the rest of the family. But if you get the father, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the statistics jump up to about 85% that the whole family will be saved. The whole family would know the Lord if you get the father. And it seems like they flip it and they go, well, we'll get the youth because that's, I don't know if it's easier, there's less friction there. And then they go for the mother, and then it ends men ends up thinking that church is only for women and children. So you can go there and talk to that real nice guy, because it's safe for my wife and my children, or my girlfriend and my children. But it's not a place for me, and that's what, I mean, that's what I feel is going on in the city and everywhere. Where, and you said it too, where the father, being a man, being a godly man, is not really nothing you talk about unless it's Father's Day and you beating up on the man for not stepping up. But it's not really nothing you talk about, as this is the outworking of who you are as a man, the outworking of the gospel of who you are as a man. When you act this way, when you act like a man, that brings glory to God. When you take responsibility, that brings glory. This is how you walk out, thus saith the Lord, as a man, by doing this and this and this, and all that. And it seems like it falls by the wayside. And it seems like most churches, it have, like you said, other priorities beyond the thing that's going to make the biggest impact, which is manhood, fatherhood, marriage, and families, and speaking to them, and that nuclear power that's in the family going out into the world, and affecting their neighbors. We don't spend a whole lot of time talking about the importance of the family dynamic. You know what I mean?
Yes, and it's easy to be to get frustrated and to begin to bash churches. I try not to because that really doesn't help. Because first of all, they're not hearing it, and second of all, it's not productive. So
Mm-hmm.
what I try to do is actually do a workaround. How do we reach fathers in
That's
a
good.
way,
That's good.
you know what I mean? Because apparently the government is not prioritizing it. The church is not prioritizing it. So what can be done? We know what apparently is not being done and how hard it is to change that. So what can be done? So we landed on this is after years of trying and having some success. We landed on trying to reach fathers directly um, through their cell phones with what we call Fathering Strong,
Mm-hmm.
which is an app-based platform that we're seeking to get fathers who want to be better dads and fathers who want to help other dads
Yep.
to come together in community so that we could strengthen one another, so that we can encourage one another, so that we could help one another, we can mentor one another. Because the answer, I believe, is fathers themselves. I think we as fathers ourselves need to step up to bat and say, and lock arms and say, look, we're the only ones that can change this because apparently no one else cares.
Right. Right. Right.
We have to be the one.
Amen.
The
Amen.
ones to take the reins and say, okay, we're going to tackle this thing ourselves as men.
What do you have? Okay, so let's say I'm a first time dad, first time, first generation Christian, just trying to wrap my head around this responsibility, this little bundle of joy and fear and laughter and responsibility, and taking care of a house and things like that. How would you talk to this man to help him be a strong father? How would you help this man make fathering strong again?
Well, we have found that with a father who didn't have a role model or a good role model as a father, didn't have a father who was a good role model for them. Perhaps he wasn't there at all. Um, some of them really don't have a good idea of what a father is
Right.
or what the role of a father is. Not going to learn it from culture because culture is mom centered, mom and kid centered,
You
right?
preaching. You ain't
And,
doing
and
nothing with preaching.
yeah, and even the social services apparatus in the country is focused on moms and children. So not a lot of attention is paid to, okay, how do we help these dads be the best they can be?
Mm.
So we start with the basics. We have a program that we call Pops 101. It's only 4 or 5 sessions. I say 4 or 5 because sometimes you need a first session just to get things organized.
Hmm.
But there's 4 lessons, and it's based on the acronym POPs, which stands for protectors, order keepers, providers, and stabilizers. So we organize those responsibilities or roles of a man into those 4 easy to remember uh, words: protectors, order keepers, providers, and stabilizers.
Hmm.
And each week we take one of those. And when we are teaching about being a protector, and we start with protector rather than provider, because for so long it's that provider role that's received all the attention. That's what child support
That's
is
true.
all about. It's like, okay, you need to pay for your children. Okay, that's been the focus. So we start with protector, and we explain what it is to be a protector. Why children and mothers need a protector, and just what that looks like for a man to be a protector for his family. And then we move from there to order keeper, and we show examples of why every family, every child needs someone who is an order keeper,
Mm. I like that.
to help them grow up in an environment that's going to be orderly, right? And then provider, and we talk about not just the financial provision that children and families need, but the other things that fathers bring to the table. We bring resources that have nothing to do with money. For instance, you're a man of faith, so we talk about being the spiritual leader of your family. You
Amen.
are providing spiritual guidance as a father. I had that in a father. And then even though that wasn't his strongest suit, he showed us by example what it is to be a man of God, a spiritual
Yes,
man.
ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Um, Fathers bring also leadership when it comes to, and this is really not taught at all, Harley, and that is men bring um, a an emotional resource to the child's life that they cannot get from their mother.
Yes.
Children
Yes.
need their mother's nurturance, but they also need male nurturance that comes from the father. So that is something that the father provides. And we even talk about the need for, that children have for, a well-rounded life, including recreation. And so, the father brings that to the table. He gets the kids involved in things that are just for fun or sports. He brings male kinds
Yeah.
of a dynamic to the children that their mother does not bring, and
Amen.
that's okay. God designed it that way. So we talk about these other things that the father brings to the table as a provider. We talk about the familial. When the father is involved in the child's life, he's not living in a different home, or even if he is spending time with his children, he brings not just himself, but he brings the whole side of the family. Those that child's other grandparents,
Right.
uncles, and cousins and nieces and nephews. Those are important things for a child to have. If he's going to have a well-rounded and well-supported life, he needs both his mother and his father's family to be a part of his circle. So that's
Mm,
another thing that the father brings to the table. We go through all those kinds of things in the 1 hour sessions that we have. Then the final one is stabilizer. And we talk about the statistics some, but basically it's about the fact that families where there is a mother and a father committed to their children are more stable. They're less likely to be in disarray.
mm,
The children are going to be raised up um, in an environment that's going to help them to be mature and responsible. An example in this is what happens when you've got a single mother raising a child or children, and she has romantic relationships.
right.
Let's say
My
she
goodness.
has a boyfriend, and let's say the boyfriend moves in. So now the children have, and even if he's a good guy, right? Uh, what happens? That child bonds with that man.
Yes.
He becomes the father figure,
Mm-hmm.
and he becomes the daddy, basically.
Yep.
And then, unfortunately, in so many cases, when mom and this guy break up, he leaves, and that child is devastated
Yep. All over again.
all over again. So there's another trauma that happens to that child, and that's a hard thing when you keep losing people like that. It's like a death. It's like he died. He's gone. The
Yep.
guy that you had grown attached to, the guy that threw the ball with you, the guy that helped you with your homework and took you to movies, he's gone. And the mom's not thinking what impact her breakup with this guy is having on her kid.
Right.
So then a few months later, here comes another guy. And
Mm-hmm.
he now he's the father figure. And again, even if he's a good guy, right? This kid now forms a bond with this guy. And what happens over time is that child will begin to say, "Look, I'm not going to get close to this person.
Right.
I don't want anything to do with this person because I've been hurt too many times. He's not going to stay, so I'm not going to get too involved with him." And so now the child is distant. The child goes into a shell, and there's this attachment disorder now where it shows up even in school. I've seen it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Kids, you got a bunch of kids in the gym and you're having a good time, and there's a kid sitting on the wall. What's the matter, Johnny? How come you don't want to play? He has this shell around himself, and he really doesn't want any friends. He doesn't want to be connected with anybody because he's been hurt so many times by this turnstile that's been going
Wow.
on in
Yeah.
his home, where he's been hurt over and over again by people coming and leaving him. So a father, a biological father who is committed to his children, to be there for them no matter what, even if the romantic relationship dissolves, even if there's a divorce, he's committed to his children, and he's going to be there. He's going to
Mm-hmm.
be that stabilizing factor that no matter how many boyfriends mommy has, my daddy is always there for me.
Yeah.
So those are basic things about what it means to be a man, what it means to be responsible, what it means to be a father, that um, we discuss with new fathers. Don't have to be a new father, because some of these men have been fathers for years and don't know the basics of what it means
That's
to be.
true. That's
Okay,
true. That's true.
so it's open for everybody. So I hope that answered your. We don't get into things like changing diapers,
Right.
uh,
Well, that's
because
self-explanatory.
they
Yeah.
can pick that up. There are things that there are other ways you can. We only got 1 hour, and so um, we figure let's help this man with things that are going to help um, over the long haul,
What
and
it
that goes beyond the rudimentary things like changing diapers.
right. I don't think that's even you can figure that out. That's simple, but
Yeah.
it's hard to figure out how to lead and protect
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
stabilize and things like that. Those things you can't just figure out because we have so many Absalons in the world. You know Absalom, right? When David was king, Absalom would stay on the outside of the courts and kind of sweet talk the other men. And the Bible says because of that, Absalom gained the hearts of those men. Because we have so many Absalons in the world, that's given advice that on a more practical thing, like what you're talking about, how to make money, how to provide, how to, all these other things. We have Absalons in the world that are giving men to Andrew Tate, sometimes Jordan Peterson is one of them. Joe Rogan, all these guys are giving advice to men and is drawing them away from, again, taking them out of the anchor of who Jesus Christ is. And they're getting advice that works. There's certain things that just work because God has put it in the world to work that way, but they're getting drawn away from they're getting drawn away from the source of everything. Um, and I said all that to say, uh, what what is the urban light ministries and things like that? What are some things that you're doing in the community to to beyond and including the fathering strong to help men grow in that knowledge of where they come from and why it's important for them to do, or some things that's going on in the community to help to continue to help others.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, maybe it's been a little longer than that now, we did the second of our series of Nights of Blessing, in which we invite fathers to come and to fellowship, but to learn about their father wound,
Mm,
to learn to actually have exposed for them and have a chance to talk about where they're hurting. And so often they don't know that they're hurting. It's not until we start having these kind of deep conversations where their eyes are opened and they realize that they even have a father wound. I'll give you an example. When we first started our fatherhood work, and I was attending one of the sessions, I was a part of the group, our first group, which was really facilitated by my friend that I told you about. Um, and we got to that part of the curriculum that was about the father wound. And he talked about what can cause a father wound. And one of the things was this feeling of um, not having a close relationship with your father.
hmm,
Like my father, as good as he was, and I talked about him already, as good as he was stretched so thin because of having to work all the time, having responsibilities at church, having 13 children, having a wife. There's only just so much of him to go around. And so I never really had a close, personal, intimate relationship with him because there was never time. He never had the
hmm,
time. And I didn't realize until here, I'm a grown man, I'm in my 50s. And when we started talking about this, I felt the pain. It all came back. And I realized how much I needed that
hmm.
and how much not having it it impacted me. Um, so I mean, I could that's a whole session. We could talk about that for a
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
session. But anyway, this evening it's designed to set the stage for fathers to talk about what they wish they had experienced, the things that they wish they had heard from their fathers. In other words, the Bible would talk about it as being the blessing of the father, where the
Yes.
father speaks over the child. You're going to be this, you're going to be that. I love you. You're special to me. Just blessing, words of life spoken over a child. I never had that. And most men never had that.
Right, right.
And so this session allows them to talk about the things they wish they had heard from their father. They write them down, and then these men speak those things over each other. We pair them up, and they speak life over each other, these things that they wish they had heard from their fathers. So it's very therapeutic. It's encouraging, it's uplifting, and these men get a chance to minister to each other in that way. We love that. Beyond that, because we have for the past 2+ years been developing Fathering Strong, that
Hmm.
is where all of our resources has gone, because we believe that that is the future of what God has called us to do. But we're at the place now where we're about to roll that out big time. It's on God's planning.
Yep, yep.
It's all in His timing. But we want to begin again to do fatherhood classes in the community and in the jails and prisons and wherever we can we can find an open door. It's going to mean we're going to have to train some facilitators in various curriculums so that they are um, ready and able to go into these settings.
I
And
volunteer as tribute. I volunteer. I volunteer. I want to be trained.
amen, amen, amen. That's wonderful. That's what we're going to need. And because I think that there is, well, I know there's a need out there, but I think that there is support for it. It just needs to be cultivated to go out and get the support for it, to pay for the costs that are associated with that. And I love volunteers, but in my experience, um, it's an extraordinary volunteer that you can always count on to be there and to do what needs to be done, despite the fact that they're not getting paid. But
That's
most
true.
people, in order to properly motivate them, to maintain them as volunteers, or as workers, and to get the best out of them, you need to pay them, which means you need funding to do that. But I think that the funding potentially is out there. And so that's a part of what needs to be done. In fact, if I had someone, if you're that guy who can come on and help with that part of it, that's what would make it sustainable.
Mm. There's a lot going on because me and the audience doesn't know this, but I got a fatherhood award on it's Juneteenth, the Juneteenth festival. We have the Father
Yes, you
Fest.
did. You're one of our
Um,
Good Dad Award winners.
yeah, Good Dad Award, and that's what got me into wanting to because I've been doing Restoring Heroes since 2014, and that's what got me wanting to do more locally. We can podcasts and these things are very, very important because it spreads the message out far. But if you're not doing things in your own backyard, that's what convicted me. If you're not doing anything in your own backyard and you're not really changing anything, you're just talking to the world and hopefully you get some subscribers or some listeners along the way. But um the desire to put boots to the ground and really help men, because I know some young men. I've been talking to some young men who just some people I used to teach. My former students are now adults and they have children, and I've been calling them up and seeing how I can help them. But I didn't think about the pops thing. That's what sparked my interest. Like, okay, well, that's a good way of honing down the all. Because if you're like me, you do a whole lot of research. All the research that you from spilling out in one one session that will keep me more disciplined and okay,
Yeah.
this is this and this is this and this and this, so I can help these young men become better fathers and start with a small group and kind of expand from there. um but yeah, that is perfect, and this is the type of thing I want to encourage the men to do, the heroes to do out there is to continue to where you are, take responsibility and change and do and learn as much as you can. Um, where can what's the name of your website? Where can we find you? Where are more resources, Pastor Eli?
All right. Well, first of all, let me say I'm excited that you feel that calling, because it's definitely needed, and I'll be looking forward to working with you to train you in Pops 101 and to make the resources for that available,
Hmm.
and work with you in establishing, um, getting your group, those young men that you're talking about, involved in a Pops 101 um, initiative. As far as our website is concerned, there are two websites. Our main website is urbanlight.org. Urbanlight, light.org. That's
Hmm.
our, as I said, that's our corporate website. And then we have another website which is connected to it and linked to it, and that's fatheringstrong.com.
Okay.
Fatheringstrong.com. And that is the one that is that has all of the resources and the nuts and bolts and all that, having to do with our online and mobile initiative that's designed to reach fathers far and wide. Through that, there's access to our weekly podcast called the Fathering Strong Podcast.
Yep.
You know, we're so creative. And then there's the Fathering Strong weekly blog post. Um, there are devotionals on there. I do a 7-day U version um, devotional that's also on there. There's access to all kinds of resources, research, videos, and things like that that can be helpful to a father who's just hungry for information, or for people who are interested in helping fathers or working with fathers or resourcing fathers. So those are our two websites, and we welcome anyone to check those out if you'd like to learn more about our ministry and our programs.
Yeah, that and I'm part of the Fathering Strong app. I'm on there. I put some articles and stuff like that,
Yeah, you're doing a good job with that. That's
trying to get Pastor Eli's attention so I can write for the newsletter and stuff like that. So I've been throwing out stuffs.
well, I mean, it's really really good. What you're doing is really good. It's informative. That's what that platform is for, and so we're delighted that you're using it the way that you are. So keep up the good work. I should mention that we do have Pops 101 online. I haven't checked lately to make sure it's where it's supposed to be, but if you go to our courses tab, you should be able to find it, Pops 101, in English as well as in Spanish. If not, please let me know, and I'll make sure that it's where everybody can find it. So we have had folks from all over the country, even other countries, take that course since it's been up. We haven't been promoting it much, as we haven't been promoting much of anything because of the focus on developing Fathering Strong, which is such a groundbreaking, cutting edge thing that it has taken virtually all of our resources.
Well, it's been an honor talking to you, and I can't wait to continue to talk. We text and talk more often than we used to. So I'm glad to get to know you. I'm glad to partner with you to help men in Springfield, Ohio, and where we live locally. Before we go, what are some encouraging things you can say to a listener, to a dad who's listening to this? Um, you got any encouraging words, some advice to give him?
Well, it would be this, that you are special. God designed you in a way that you can provide for your children what no one else on earth can. He has equipped you with the potential to being the kind of father that your children need. And there is no one on earth, there's not another man, there's not even the children's mother can give your children what you can. And that is your personal father love. You have a love for your children like no one else. You can provide for them what no one else can. So I just want to
Yeah.
encourage you to be your best you as a father, and to be there for your children no matter what. No matter what happens between you and the mother, hopefully you've got a good, strong, loving relationship. But even if you don't, your children are going to need you.
Hmm.
They need you now. They're going to need you for their entire lives. And here's another thing I want to leave with you. Not only do your children need you, you need them. You need them to be all that God has called you to be. And there is no satisfaction, there is no joy that can beat just knowing that you are your children's father and the one person on earth who can give them what no one else can. That
Right.
is your personal devotion, your love that's God given for Him to channel His love through you to them. No one can take your place. Be there. Be there for them. It'll be the best decision you've ever made in your life.
I don't got nothing else to add.